Hello and welcome to Titles Mean Nothing. Today's episode is going to be a bit different, and we hope it's going to set sort of a precedent for some of our episodes in the future.
Yeah, we're going to be doing some that are a little more researched, a little more focused, and thus far the focus has been on music history.
Yeah, quite a lot of music history, and they're kind of like story based in some ways. Mine's definitely a story today. Anyway, shall we get on with the episode? You're listening to Titles Mean Nothing. I'm Sasha Swift.
I'm Alex Thomas.
And today I'm going to talk to you about one of my favourite bands of all time. Get ready, drum roll. 3-time players of the Glastonbury Festival. They shared a drummer with Oasis. They collaborated with Sinead O'Connor, Peter Gabriel and Guy Chambers. Nominated for a Grammy Award. Won Album of the Year by Q Magazine. Won an Ivor Novello Award and provided music for the soundtracks of Reality Bites, Clueless and She's the One.
Who is this greatly esteemed band that I'm sure we have all heard of?
World Party. Who are World Party, and how come you've never heard of them? So to answer the question, who are World Party, first of all you have to answer the question, who is Carl Wallinger?
Please welcome Carl Wallinger, ladies and gentlemen. Yay!
Hello, thank you.
Magically sitting here and wearing the very same shirt.
Yes, it's the same one.
So, Carl Wallinger, Alex, is a Welsh multi-instrumentalist. So he plays like bass, guitar, keyboards, and he sings, which is why, obviously growing up as a teenager and in his 20s, he was in like quite a lot of bands. From
that description as well, maybe it's someone I could see you kind of relating to with playing all the different instruments.
Yeah, I play a lot. So professionally, like Carl has always been in the music biz. He had a job at a music publisher briefly, and he even directed Rocky Horror in the West End in the 1980s. But his break kind of came in 1983 when he joined the Waterboys on their live tours, and he ended up playing on 2 of their albums, A Pagan Place and This Is the Sea. Do you know much about the Waterboys?
I know zero about the Waterboys.
Yeah. Well, I'm not a huge fan, to be honest, but I know some of the members, and you know they're quite a popular band, especially in their time. So Carl was only supposed to kind of play piano, organ, and do a few backing vocals on Waterboys tracks, but his skills really impressed Mike Scott, who was a member, and he ended up contributing much more to This Is the Sea. Yeah, he kind of like outgrew the band, and although Carl was contributing more, he clearly knew he was capable of even more than that. So he ended up leaving the band in 1985 and he formed his own band called World Party. World Party in 1985 is a one-man band. It's Carl Wallinger working on his own material by himself. A relatively unknown guy. He's programming drum machines, playing guitar, bass, keyboards, and he's getting help from other musicians from time to time too, such as Sinead O'Connor, who at this point in time is not a household name.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
So she's not very
Before
well known. Yeah. So in return, he was working on her debut album. Yeah, his first album, Private Revolution, had his first hit, Ship of Fools, which hit the charts in Australia and other countries too, and that was just the beginning. Released 3 more albums in the 90s and 1 in 2000, spawning a few minor hits. Now, I'm going to see if you've heard of any of these. Put the message in the box.
No, I do wonder with these, if hearing them, I'll know them.
Way Down Now?
Yes.
Yeah, I've played you that though.
I'd heard that before. That's like, in my head, if I think of like classic 90s songs, that I would say would be like in the top 10. I wouldn't necessarily know who it was, but I'd have been able to hum it.
Really? Mm-hmm. Wow, okay. Is it like Today? Do you know that?
I think so.
That's one of his bigger hits as well. But yeah, this is the thing, they were so underappreciated, it's ridiculous to think that they've barely known by anybody.
And I also heard you describe the music industry as being a bit like an ejector seat. Is that how you really see the music industry? Like, could you imagine
I've got no illusions as to sort of, how, fickle it is, I mean, it's... I kind of try to protect myself against that by sort of only coming out every 3 years or something, so...
That was only a small snippet, but the idea of him kind of like protecting himself, isolating himself from the music business, maybe that's a contributing factor to why he wasn't so well known, because he wasn't schmoozing. Yeah. And also kind of hearing him say that is sort of akin to another Welsh music act I've been reading about. Who largely rejected it for a long time. But
there's still more. I mean, the Manic Street Preachers, who you're on about, are supporting Bon Jovi at the weekend. Or today, yeah.
This is what I was just going to say. Initially, they were very, like, taking that kind of stance, we don't want to be in with these posers, etc. But then as the 90s developed and they realised, oh, actually, money popularity, chart hits, they started to smooth a lot more.
Yeah, so that interview snippet is like actually from quite early on. That's maybe his second, third album. So like even then he's kind of like aware, and he's only releasing material sporadically. Touring wasn't his main thing. So if you're a World Party fan and you listen to them, it's quite evident where their stylistic influences come from. The best I can say is that it's actually quite Beatley.
Certainly.
Yeah, I'm a big Beatles fan, as anyone who knows me will know. Actually, they did like a fair few Beatles songs as like B-sides too.
Cry, baby, cry. I'm fixing a hole where the rain gets in. Dear Prudence, happiness is a warm gun. All you need is love.
I really enjoyed that. I was thinking maybe he should have been cast in that Yesterday film.
I don't think he can quite act. Like he's quite awkward in interviews. Like you can tell he's like not used to being interviewed, kind of. So World Party, as well as being influenced by Dylan, they've got like a few Dylan-esque songs and Dylan covers as well.
All I really wanna do is baby be friends with you. What's a sweetheart like you doing in a dump like this? How does it feel? Tell me, how does it feel?
Yeah, you can tell like he's a big Dylan fan from that, can't you? That live version of Like a Rolling Stone is one of the best versions I've ever heard, I think.
Yeah, you can actually tell what words are being said.
And he also covered, Bowie, wrote some Bowie-inspired songs as well. And he also quoted from The Who, so yeah, these are big sort of box tickers for me, aren't they?
Oh yeah, we're ticking all the boxes here.
Yeah.
And it's nice. I think it's nice when someone's like got that kind of historic background to refer back to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There are a lot of people like that I know who don't necessarily know who the Who are or very much about the Beatles, etc. And if someone's going to be a musician, it's nice to have that foundation for
it's
your
a
own
legacy,
stuff.
isn't it?
Yeah.
So there's a film out at the moment, Yesterday, which is about a world if the Beatles never existed and this guy who knows all their songs. Then like we're saying, it's got like references to Coldplay, Ed Sheeran in it, but they would not yeah, they wouldn't have existed without the Beatles. It's ridiculous. Yeah. So after Carl's first album or two, he starts moving on and he realises naturally he's got to expand the band, because like a one-man band can't really sustain itself for a live tour and things like that. And there's always something that other musicians can bring to sort of albums as well.
unlike the last couple of records, you've got a couple of other full card-carrying members, as the bio says, as
Yes,
well.
that
Party.
kind of thing. Well, I mean, you know,
What
we
do they
just...
do?
Well, you know, one of them's Dave Catlin Birch, who plays guitar and bass and sings. And another guy's called Chris Sharrock, who plays the drums. And we also had Guy Chambers was with us for a while, making this record, not very long. And then he went off and did his own sort of group sort of thing. I mean, we just kind of make music. We just have a sort of click between ourselves, and we do some of the tracks. I mean, some of the tracks I did on my own, and some of the tracks I did with Dave, and some of the tracks I did with just Chris, and some of the tracks I did with Dave and Chris, or maybe I laid down the backing track with one of them and played with the other, you know what I mean? Like...
So, these new members of the band were really important because they really brought something new to the albums, you know. Instead of drum machines, there were actual drums on the albums. So yeah, do you know Chris Sharrock? No. So he was the drummer. He was drummer for Oasis, who you love. You don't like Chris Sharrock also drummed for BDI, and now he drums for Noel Gallagher's High Flying Birds.
Shake my tree, where's the apple for me? Tickle my feet with the enemy.
He was also drummer for the Icicle Works, of which I know absolutely nothing. And do you know Dave Catlin Birch, the
name
guitarist?
rings a bell.
Does he? Okay. He was a former Paul McCartney impersonator in the Bootleg Beatles. So if you ever see like Dave Catlin Birch in any of the videos and he's playing bass, for example, he'll be playing the Beatle bass that Paul McCartney played. So what's really important about like that interview snippet is Carl's mention of Guy Chambers. So he's a man who is a really big deal in the music industry, or at least he was in like the late 90s, early 2000s. He's a man who contributed songwriting, synth, drum samples, and additional production work to Carl's music. By the way, apologies, like I'm croaking like a fair bit. I've got kind of a sore throat at the moment. So yeah, if you're not familiar with World Party, you won't be familiar with one of their more popular songs, a track called She's the One, which appeared on their fourth album, Egyptology, in 1997. So this track peaked at, do you want to know where it peaked? In the Billboard Top 200.
I'll take a wild guess and say like 61.
167 on the US Billboard 200. So it's a fantastic song that Carl wrote for his mother, but it did absolutely nothing. But it's also a song whose story goes to show how undervalued Carl and World Party actually were.
If there's somebody calling me on, she's the one. She's the one. If there's
No, I was commissioned to do it for a film called She's the One, and Tom Petty was the music supervisor kind of thing, sort of organising the soundtrack. And there were a few other bands involved, and it was the title track, so I sort of knocked it out in an afternoon, you know, like you do. And I sent it off. Well, I mean, actually, it's funny because it just sort of came out in sort of one go kind of thing. It was quite a funny moment. And sent that one off, and then he decided to do the whole thing as an album. So I got the song back, and for one reason, you know, one thing and then another happened with it, and it ended up on an album called Egyptology, which is a World Party record. And Robbie, you know, loved Egyptology. So.
At this time that singer Robbie Williams was looking for new material to record for his second solo album. So at the start of 1996, Robbie had left the boy band Take That to start his own solo career, which was like fraught with delays. He'd only released his first album at the end of 1997, so that's nearly 2 years. So between 1996 and the start of 1999, Robbie released 6 singles, and none of them failed to chart. So people were listening to them, but
I mean, people love Take That, didn't they? So
yeah, but he'd only had one number one from those 6 singles. So 5 of them, you know, just weren't popular enough. And that number one was Millennium, which was released in 1998. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Not great.
We got stars direct to the face, and we're praying it's not too late. Millennium. Some say we are players.
Why would he release Millennium in 1998? I can understand
Valid
99.
point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean,
Maybe he peaked too soon.
he got a number one with it. So, yeah. So the fact he'd only had like one number one over 2 years after disbanding from a huge British like boy band must have been really disheartening. So yeah, he's struggling to prove himself as a solo act in many ways. But do you know who Robbie was co-writing with at the time? Guy Chambers.
What a bastard.
Yeah. So Guy Chambers is also producing Robbie's material, having worked with Carl from World Party. So he's working with Robbie. Yeah, he's working with Robbie, who's this like massive sort of solo artist, and also working with Carl Wallinger, who's almost a nobody in World Party. And Guy Chambers must have been playing sort of Robbie a fair few tracks that had been released on the Chrysalis label at the time, which both Carl and Robbie were signed to. And he got Robbie listening to She's the One, and according to Robbie's official site, She's the One became a favourite song of Robbie's during his time in rehab. So the thing is, Guy Chambers saw the potential in this song, which, you know, bombed for Carl Wallinger, and he was really sneaky about it. So World Party have recorded this ballad in 96, 97, I think, with basically Carl playing all the instruments, maybe not the drums. And later on that year, he went on tour, playing a few dates in Chicago and Nashville with his touring band. And after the tour was over, Guy Chambers poached World Party's touring band and used them, the same band, World Party, to record a cover version of the song with Robbie on vocals. So what happened? What happened? Any guess?
She's the One went to number one.
She's the One became Robbie Williams' second number one and was a massive hit in the UK. And it went on to win a number of awards, including a Brit Award and a Capital Radio Award for Best Single.
Guy Chambers has got a lot to answer for.
Guy Chambers is a bastard. You know, my brother once met someone who was Guy Chambers' ex.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know what I said?
You got to be careful of defamation here.
I said she obviously wasn't the one. So Robbie's version of the song is like, it's identical. There was no reinterpretation or anything. It's literally the same version that World Party fans have been hearing on tour, only with a different pianist and a different singer. I think Guy Chambers actually played the piano on it because he often does that live for Robbie. Understandably, as you might imagine, it became a huge source of bitterness for Carl. He fell out with Guy Chambers, and he fell out with the record label Chrysalis.
I was just thinking of other covers that came on to be more popular than the original, and the first thing that came to mind was Valerie by the Zootons, and Amy Winehouse's version is much more popular, but it has distinctly different elements.
It's a very different version,
it was a very open way of doing it. I think it was a Radio 1 Live Lounge performance to start with. It's much more sort of transparent and more about like the sharing of ideas and that kind of thing, whereas there's so many underhand elements to it.
Well, it's not just that. You know that the Amy Winehouse song is a cover. People know the Zootons. It's not like taking a relatively unknown band and stealing their songs away. So Carl was quoted in a Telegraph interview as saying, "Nobody phoned me to say they were doing it. It also annoyed me that Robbie didn't sing the right words. It was a weird one. You lose your friends, but you make loads of money." And that's true because, like, financially, that must have, like, it must have really done well for Carl because he got royalties from that, you know. People still remember the song by Robbie, but otherwise he must have felt, like, kind of betrayed by his record company, who obviously saw the potential for a hit, but never took, like, that time.
Yeah, they didn't promote him doing it. They were like, oh, Robbie Williams, that's a name we know, let's slap it on him instead.
Yeah, they used it as a vehicle for, like, a more established pop star. And that's such a shame, you know. It could have made Carl. It really could have, that song. And other songs could have, you know, because obviously he's thinking, what else could they have promoted better that could have been, like, a huge hit? And so Robbie won, like, a Brit Award for Best Single in 2000 for She's the One. Do you know what he said in his acceptance speech?
Go on.
So, to see me fight Liam? Would you pay to come and see it? Liam, 100 grand of your money, 100 grand of my money. We'll get in the ring and we'll have a fight and you can all watch it on TV. What do you think about that? Now, are you going to do it or are you going to pussy out, you wimp?
To be fair though, was he unwell at the time? Because
Robbie.
Yeah, because he's got bipolar.
Okay, I didn't know that. He'd just come out of... Well, he'd been out of rehab, and he'd recorded this album. And, yeah, that was referring to Liam Gallagher.
What?
There's
Like,
no-
maybe I need
yeah.
more context, but why was he trying to fight Liam
He
Gallagher?
had a feud with Liam Gallagher. Yeah, there was a feud going on. I think they've settled it now, because who cares? But also, it's like, he's like, 100 grand of my money is like, fuck, you know, that's not a big deal to him.
Yeah.
You know, he's just earned off, like, Carl's song.
Yeah, it's got like showing off like that.
No reference to World Party. No reference to the fact it's a cover. And we kind of have to contextualise as well. Take Glastonbury 1998, for example. Carl and World Party were playing some far-flung acoustic tent in the mud to like a really small audience. You know, this well-established group who at the time had 4 albums and loads of great songs. Whilst Robbie played the main stage to an audience of 100,000 people. And there's a lot to be bitter about. Like, Robbie also, like, played with the lyrics a bit, which, you know, annoyed Carl. Because Carl, all he has is his integrity, really.
Yeah.
What was the original lyric?
We were fun all along, and he changed it to we were fine all along. I know it doesn't seem like a big deal, but there you go.
Does it really? And every
Does it
time you hear
rank
it,
with
does
you?
it? Yeah.
No, not really, no.
We were fine all along. We were fine all along.
Maybe that made all the difference. Like, people listened to, like, Carl's version and were like, fun, no, I don't like this. And it was like...
Fun is a big ask. I
Yeah.
will be content with just being fine.
So, like, come 2000, Carl had really fell out with his record label because of what they did to him. And he'd started his own, on which he'd released his 5th studio album, called Dumbing Up. It's like a mostly Dylan-esque album, I guess. One which John Aspiri of AllMusic described as more comforting than it is groundbreaking. It is a decent album, I like it. And it's great for the fans who wanted more music.
Keep telling myself that it don't have to be this way. Yeah, I'm talking about life and everything that we do today. I'm not falling for the same old lies that we did before. I'm just telling you now so you know why I'm out that door. Here comes the future. I hope that you can. I hope that you can work it out.
But then, to make matters worse, in 2001, tragedy struck.
Now, for musician Carl Wallinger, the 80s and 90s were a whirlwind of hit singles and Ivor Novello awards, and then 11 years ago, his whole world came apart.
Yes, Carl, who was part of the Waterboys and World Party, suffered a life-threating brain aneurysm.
Yeah, up in a little holiday village kind of thing, and in February, and suddenly from sitting in a studio, probably what you might call chain smoking, I then decided to go and ride around in sort of sub-zero temperatures, chasing my son, who's fit as a fiddle, and sort of got back to my little room and came out and said to my family, I'm going to have a sleep, I've got a bit of a headache. And then I came out an hour later and said, phone an ambulance, you know, so that was it. Yeah, it was a pretty strange moment.
And that was an aneurysm that you had.
That was an aneurysm, yeah. I mean, it's strange. I never thought I was in jeopardy. You know, it was a very strange thing. I thought, you know, coming to after the op, I was like surrounded by people I thought were a lot more ill than I was. You know what I mean? I sort of felt okay. You know, it's a pretty strange thing.
So
to
the
say,
world party had to come to a halt for a bit.
Yeah.
I suppose that kind of speaks for itself. He had his brain aneurysm and it changed his life. Long term, he lost his like peripheral vision in his right eye, And he says that the world is like looking around a corner at him. But worse still, at least for the fans, his aneurysm prevented him from playing, it prevented him from recording, and it prevented him from touring. Because not only had he like disconnected from his record company, he'd started his own and got back all the rights for his music. And at this point, he can't even operate that record company.
No.
But this is where like Robbie's cover of She's the One becomes a double-edged sword. Because, according to Carl himself, it's the song that saved his bacon. And I just looked at Alex and I did,
quotation marks.
Saved his bacon, other words he used. He said, "It was lucky it was a hit. It saved my arse financially for a few years whilst I was holding on onto the handrail thinking, what happened?" That's such a sad image, isn't it?
But like you say, kind of a pro in a way that those royalties were a safety net. Because, he was essentially self-employed. You don't get sick pay when you're in that line of work.
Yeah. He said they were, a lifesaver. They kept his kids clothed and his family fed whilst he recuperated. And recovery, took a really long time, because it does. So yeah, at this time, obviously, Robbie's still touring. He's playing Carl's song, and at one of Robbie's gigs, Guy Chambers joined him on stage, and he introduced She's the One like this.
I was going to introduce this as the best song we've ever written, and I think I still will. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the best song we've ever written. It's called She's the One.
You were saying about a stab in the back. Bloody hell.
Yeah, so Robbie Williams telling all of his fans, these massive legions of people, that he's written that song. And Carl, in his own words, is like, eating crackers dipped in water. It's horrible, isn't it? So apparently Carl's daughter Nancy was in the audience for that particular performance, and she videoed it, and she showed her dad. And so Carl phoned Guy Chambers to pass on a message to Robbie. I'm quoting this from Reveal, Robbie Williams by Chris Heath, because I don't want to be accused of saying something that,
be very clear on your source.
So, can you tell your friend he's a cunt? Your fucking friend Robbie Williams. Tell him from me that he's a cunt.
Fair enough.
Yeah, it is. I mean, he is.
What else are you going to say?
Robbie Williams, yeah. Carl's comment to Robbie didn't go down too well, and Robbie just started introducing it as the 8th best song he'd ever written. So, it's not very helpful, but, still claiming it's his.
He's still taking credit for it, yeah.
It really is a series of unfortunate events for Carl Wallinger, and he's been continually dicked over and prevented from recognition by Guy and Robbie, and also by having a brain aneurysm. So after his aneurysm, there's this kind of like wilderness years where these pockets of fandom cropped up, mostly through World Party's messaging boards on worldparty.net, which no longer exists. And there was tape trading, that's what happened like in the 90s, most 80s and 90s, tape trading was big. But when the internet comes along, more obscure things like World Party. So there's like bootlegs of live performances and released tracks, rarities. And occasionally Carl would actually crop up on the message board to respond to some fan comments or to share unreleased tracks himself and things. My brother was a big fan of World Party 2, and he would buy cassette tapes and recorded CDs from people abroad, apparently like someone quite prolific from Sweden. So one of the things he has a copy of now is a CD called World Party Tribute by The Joint. So I don't know who The Joint is, and I can't find any like trace of the CD online. I've googled, and I emailed someone who was hosting World Party tracks on a website, and he said, "Hi Sasha, yes, I'm a huge World Party fan. If I can contribute to your podcast, I'd be happy to oblige. I'm afraid, however, that I know nothing about the Joint tribute album." And so, I just like, where do I find out about this? And I haven't found out an awful lot. So I posted on Reddit. There's a World Party subreddit. It's got like 4 people following it, and one of them's me. And that's such a shame as well. But I asked if anyone knew about this joint tribute CD, and one person did, but they couldn't tell me that much. So this is what they sent to me. Alex is going to read this.
I don't know a ton, but while Carl was sick and not making music, a website called The Joint popped up. The best I could tell, it was run by a woman who went by the nickname Jointy online. She hosted bootlegs of live recordings from concerts and radio shows and interviews. I downloaded several of them when I ran across it. I think there was also a forum for people to chat with each other. I got the impression that Jointy had some way to keep up with how Carl was doing, though I couldn't tell if she knew him for real or just, like me, I had met him at shows and chatted with him there. Once Carl was back to making his own music and touring again, the site disappeared. I don't know why. That's what I know, and it ain't much.
So yeah, who is Jointy? One thing I have found is, some of his touring schedules suggest that he played at a place called The Joint as well.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And I don't know much about the venue. So, who is Jointy? We don't know. Could be his wife, could be his daughter. Is it a woman? Because they've said woman.
Yeah,
but I don't know how
they determine that.
If anyone who's a World Party fan listens and knows anything about The Joint, or has appeared on that Joint tribute album,
or is Jointy,
just drop us a message, or if you're Carl and do drop us a message, because I'd really like to know.
Was that you dreaming out of control? Don't get uneasy, no one's ever understood it all. And we will always love you, we'll be so proud of you. We will sing your song tonight. When they call you out, when they ask you who you've been, will you have a doubt, or will you tell them with a grin? I was lost, I was blind, I was blind, I was lost, I was you.
So what happened to World Party? 2006. Carl took a very, very small World Party on the road in Australia and the US, playing a number of under-the-radar acoustic sets, sort of testing the waters for a return to the music industry. It really did seem to fans like not much would happen, especially to UK fans. Carl was apparently deliberately avoiding the UK, saying it was something he only wanted to do when he was back up to speed, and it took up to 2012 before things really got back into gear.
Such a long, long time for someone just like you. I've been trying to clear my mind, so tell me what to do. And I don't even know what I want anymore.
I mean, can you sit down and a song like She's the One just come to you in an afternoon still?
Well, I hope so. Who knows, really? That'll be interesting to put the new album out and see what happens as far as people's idea of what I'm doing goes. But I seem to be doing the same things that I ever did. Sort of things.
And Archaeology is the name of the album.
Archaeology.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Because I was looking.
It's spelled with a K.
A-R-K-E.
Yeah. Well, it's spelled wrong, so that it's
spell
not
check
too,
wasn't working.
It's not too highfalutin. I couldn't really choose the tracks myself, and because I just kind of wood for the trees thing, and I sent Mike Worthington back to New York with 5.5 days of music on CDs and stuff, and Mike came back with 4 CDs that he'd found out of this 5.5 days of music from the studio over the 25 years, basically.
Yeah.
And he came back with 4 CDs, some of which I'd done one night. I'd done a song one night, for instance, and then never heard it again. It was one of those sort of things. And he found some gems, and I was really happy to put it together. And I put a CD worth of music together in London while he was in New York doing that. And we got together. We had 5 CDs, so we had 70 tracks, and I just put them in the little folders inside the diary, and that was our box set sort of thing. So. And it's called Archaeology because it's kind of like from the last 25 years kind of thing. It's like an archaeological find.
Yeah.
70 tracks, that's quite a lot of music.
Yeah, it seems that like Carl was working on a lot of new World Party tracks in the background, and he threw them inside like a 5 CD set of super rare, unreleased and unheard material, which became Archaeology, the first World Party release that I was old enough to anticipate. He put together a huge band for a big comeback gig at the Royal Albert Hall, and I was there. And I absolutely loved it. So there's no way that I was going to miss the gig. You know, I don't live in London, but, you know, I travelled. But I thought it would be my only chance to see one of my favourite bands live. And I think it speaks volumes about the strength of the material and Archaeology that he was able to open with one of the new tracks from it. But yeah, he did like another couple of tours in the few years after that too. I actually saw him in Manchester. I think it was the Deaf Institute. And then at the Cavern Club in Liverpool. You know the Cavern Club?
I'm aware of
Yeah, the world famous Cavern Club, where the Beatles played before they were famous. And I saw them on separate tours, and each time the gigs got smaller and more intimate.
I've always had a preference for more sort of intimate gigs.
Yeah, they're better, yeah. I mean, if you compare the Royal Albert Hall to the Cavern Club, but they're both world famous venues, they're very different from one another. But I never thought I'd see World Party once, let alone 3 times.
You'd said about him avoiding the UK sort of back in the day, so
Yeah.
then to get to see him 3 times.
And like in the UK there were whisperings that he was touring in the US, and we were like, So I'm thrilled. I really am thrilled that I've seen World Party 3 times. But that's like a while ago now. He hasn't been on tour for a while. And today, World Party maintain a presence on Facebook with over 13,500 likes.
How does that compare, say, to Robbie? I'd be interested. 4.9 million. I checked a few minutes ago, yeah.
And not that we're going to put them in like a Carl versus Robbie situation.
No, but, you know, by virtue of that track, it did boost and elevate Robbie Williams' career.
It could have boosted and elevated Carl's career considerably.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. As far as I can tell, Carl actually runs the Facebook page himself. I might be wrong, but I don't think it really does him any favours, which isn't his fault as well. He's a musician.
Yeah, he's no social media expert or influencer.
Yeah. But to be fair, I don't really think he's interested in self-promotion. He's reaching the people he wants to, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, and it kind of marries up to what you were saying at the very beginning about how he doesn't kind of schmooze with the music people. Yeah. He's not interested in kind of selling and promoting himself. He'll let the content speak for itself.
Yeah. And clearly, like, there is an audience because, you know, like in the mid-2000s, like I was saying, when there was no material coming out, people were on the forums, on the message boards, trying to find this unheard bootleg material. I mean, I try and find as many World Party songs as I can. I've had to get them from cassette tapes, antiquated early 2000s websites, B-sides from vinyls that have never had like a digital release. And yeah, you know, there is an audience there. He's reaching the people he wants to. So on Facebook he'll like occasionally post old music videos, old videos generally, interviews, live performances, unheard material and demos. But he also like posts a lot of unrelated to the band stuff. Like a band would largely post stuff related, like directly related to the band.
Here's our tour, here's our festivals we're performing at.
I mean, he'll post a lot about like issues he's passionate about, like environmental issues, plastic pollution, rainforests, endangerment, endangered species, and associated petitions for people to sign. Yeah, which, you know.
Yeah, I got all of an activist.
Yeah,
he's using, you know, that appeal that he does have to try and, you know, influence people in a way. So that's good.
I'm sure people who listen to World Party are probably very aware of those kind of things. Yeah. But he also posts articles related to British politics.
I wonder which way he leans. Being from Wales as well, for one thing.
Yeah.
Like, that's already like 3 marks towards being a lefty.
And he posts a lot of music history posts too. And yeah, one of the things I think negative is that he often responds to fan comments on posts, and sometimes it makes him come across a bit rude and sarcastic and condescending. So he did it with me once. He posted like behind the scenes of Paul McCartney and Wings recording Rockestra. Rockestra is like Paul McCartney was trying to put a rock orchestra together of like the big names at the time.
I think that we had that on in the car.
We had it in the car yesterday, yeah. what I commented when Carl had posted this was, I said it kind of sounds like anyone could have been on the track, really, in my opinion. It's not like outstanding. And if you'd have had like Pete Townsend doing a solo, it would have sounded like Pete Townsend
solo, yeah.
Yeah, or the other guitarists, or the other bass players, or the other drummers, and the other singers. And he responded like, I can't remember. I mean, I've not got the exact comment.
You didn't screenshot it?
Yeah, I've deleted my Facebook. So it was like a really rude response, and it kind of like threw me off. I think, for fans who love his music, to hear that from someone who's like putting personality into his posts.
And you were a few years younger as well, so someone you'd looked up to for years and years, to then kind of have them shoot you down.
Yeah, World Party are in my top 5 bands of all time. I was in my early 20s at the time, and obviously you can misread tone when it's typed, especially on an offhanded comment. So I like to look past it, I think all in all I'm here for the music, so I don't let it bother me. Mm-hmm. So World Party today, Carl claims that a new album is in the works. He said it's cooking on the oven on a slow roast, and he promises he'll do his utmost to make sure there are plenty of copies of a new record, and that it will be of the highest possible creative quality with everything a fan could expect. Because this will be his first studio album in nearly 20 years, it's a big deal for the fans.
It's just music, really. It's just stuff, what I do in my studio, you know what I mean? I'm just pretty lucky to go and indulge in thinking of something and then going and recording it, and luckily seem to have done a sort of enough of a job to have, spent my last sort of 30 years or whatever it is, doing this. So I just feel sort of lucky, really,
He for the most part, comes across as a very, humble guy. Just loves what he does.
Yeah.
Just love what he does. And yeah, like you were saying there, I'm just going to make sure there's as much available as possible for people, in the interest of, access to people, rather than it being, sometimes people try and sell things as an exclusive item to increase demand, or increase, build up ahead of time. But obviously he's not interested in that kind of gimmick.
Yeah.
It's just, I've been working on this stuff, I love what I do, here it is.
He knows the fans will want it as well,
Mm-hmm.
And, there's things about Carl that you pick up, like, he's not used to being interviewed. He's kind of shy in interviews, that's what I feel. And I feel like, as well as that, there was an interview earlier, a clip from BBC Breakfast from about 7 years ago. It's almost like the interviewers don't know how to handle that, because they're so used to, self-promoters.
That's the thing. People will go on, BBC Breakfast, or the evening shows like Graham Norton, and it'll be, chat, but buy this, do this. He did obviously talk about Archaeology. He seems just so much more low-key.
Yes, yeah, he's very low-key. He's got a family, he's got children, he's got a wife. He's got his home studio set up. He wants to sit back and make some recordings.
Kind of reminds me of George Harrison, like a bit of a recluse.
Yeah, I could see that, to be honest. George Harrison he did a tour in the 70s, he did a tour in the 90s. He never really played live otherwise, maybe sporadically. But I suppose the other thing about, and he'd come from a more established group, actually. Yeah, George was fortunate enough to have the money after the Beatle years to support his lifestyle. Whereas Carl, obviously, where would he be if he hadn't had She's the One covered by Robbie? Because he wouldn't have the royalty checks.
No. It's like you're saying, double-edged sword with that.
It is, yeah.
He doesn't get the credit, but he was able to keep his kids clothed during that hard time.
But imagine if, Chrysalis had promoted World Party's version of She's the One. Would that have elevated World Party retrospectively and in the future? It couldn't have prevented his aneurysm.
Oh.
Well, unlikely, I think there are so many people out there who could discover World Party and really love them as a band.
That's the thing. It's, obviously we're kind of looking into a crystal ball here and what ifs, but you can market anything. Had he been marketed properly, yeah, okay, he's not from this huge band that was Take That had the same name as Robbie Williams. But like I say, you can market anything. If he was introduced on, Radio 1 or something at this time as, this is this person, here's his credentials, this is the new track, and it was put out. And they do this thing now, for instance, where they promote a particular track from a new coming artist for like a week and play it every day. Something like that, it would have got the radio play, people would have got the tune in their head, and I could see that very easily of having taken off.
One of the things I had here was like trying to source interviews and clips because I wanted to put as much of Karl in as possible. Now, because he had a release in 2012, obviously there's like, with social media, there's far more, you know, once something's been uploaded on the internet, it's nearly there forever. There's clips of him being interviewed in Australia that people have uploaded from videotapes, but also another CD that my brother got like trading in the mid-2000s was World Party talking on the radio in Australia. And so we're so fortunate to have those like historic clips, which I don't think you can't find them on the internet. So I actually think this is like an exclusive world first or something.
Not to toot your own horn. But...
Not to toot my own horn. So my advice would be, if you want to listen to World Party, they're on Spotify. I think most of the material's on Spotify. There's clips of them on YouTube, or just buy a CD, because I mean this guy is an independent artist, so if you like what you hear, buy an album, because, you know, he is fantastic. And the album artwork is you know, one of those old school, do I say that? Old school kind of people, you know, the artwork on the album is great, the inserts are wonderful, there's lyrics and things and photographs. I definitely advise you buy the album, support Karl, and yeah, I'm going to play out with one of my favourite World Party songs. It's called Is It Like Today?
It's like my own kind of like impression of a little sort of history of kind of Western sort of thought, or the ideas that sort of went around, you know, history over the last 4,000 years in 4 verses. It's a bit like some sort of bet or something, you know, can you do it in 4 verses? And it was just an attempt at understanding the to's and fro's of the ideas of the world, and the fact that people had always kind of said from in every epoch, you know, do that and it's the end of the world, or like, how did it get like this, you know, whatever it is, you know, and we're all walking around saying it a lot, but you know, major ideas have disintegrated before, and we have found the pieces and put them together. And admittedly, normally there's been a lot of bloodshed and confusion and chaos and violence and war and horribleness.
And there still is.
But we have, you know, had a habit of doing that, and no doubt we will continue to. As you say, there still is all those things.
Ago, hey, looked out through a glassless window. All that he could see was Babylon. Beautiful green fields and dreams, and learned to measure the stars. But there was a worry in his heart. He said, really worried about living. the same when you open the veins. And sometimes it was faith, power, or reason as the cornerstone. But the furrowed brow has never left his face. He said, how could it come to this? We're living in a landslide. How could it come to this? Yeah, we really want to know about this. Is it like today? Then there came the day, man packed up, flew up from the planet. He went to the moon, to the moon. Now he's out in space, hey, fixing all the problems. He comes face to face with God, who says, how could it come to this? I'm really worried about my creation. How did it come to this? You're really killing me, you know. It isn't just a day. Is it like today? Is it like today? Many years ago, he looked out through a glass. This